Aiden stared at the highway stretching ahead, the endless ribbon of asphalt glistening under the pale moonlight. The road trip to visit his childhood friend had taken longer than expected, and now he was driving through the dead of night, the darkness outside pressing in on him. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as the only sounds were the steady hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of wind against the car. The GPS on his dashboard indicated another 2 hours until he reached his destination. Aiden sighed, rubbing his eyes in a futile attempt to stave off the fatigue. He turned the radio dial, searching for something to break the monotony. Static crackled before a faint, haunting melody filled the car. It was an old tune, one that sent shivers down his spine. He quickly switched it off, preferring the silence over the eerie song. As he drove, the road seemed to narrow, the trees on either side closing in. The headlights cut through the darkness, revealing only a few yards ahead. The isolation was suffocating, the miles of empty road amplifying the feeling of being utterly alone. Aiden's thoughts drifted to urban legends and ghost stories about late-night drives, but he shook his head, dismissing them as nonsense. Then he saw it, a figure standing by the side of the road, barely visible in the dim light. It was a woman, her clothes torn and dirty, her face pale and ghostly. She raised a hand, waving frantically. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. He slowed down, hesitating. Picking up hitchhikers at this hour was risky, but leaving someone stranded in the middle of nowhere felt wrong. He pulled over, the gravel crunching under the tires. The woman approached the car, her eyes wide with fear and desperation. Aiden rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Please help me," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear from the darkness. "I need to get away from here." Aiden unlocked the passenger door, and she climbed in, shivering despite the warm night. As he started driving again, he noticed her hands were trembling. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Emily," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for stopping. What happened? Why were you out there?" Emily hesitated, biting her lip. I was with my boyfriend. We were arguing, and he left me out here. I tried to walk, but it's so dark." Aiden nodded, glancing at her. There was something off about her story, but he couldn't place it. He decided to keep driving and get her to the nearest town. As they drove, Emily grew increasingly agitated, glancing nervously at the rearview mirror. "Is someone following us?" Aiden asked, his own anxiety spiking. "I don't know," she whispered. "I just have this feeling, like we're being watched." Aiden's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He checked the mirrors but saw nothing but the empty road behind them. Yet the feeling of unease grew, the darkness outside the car seeming to press closer. After what felt like an eternity, they approached a small gas station, its neon sign flickering weakly. Aiden pulled in, the bright lights providing a brief sense of relief. He turned to Emily. "Do you need anything? Water? Food?" Emily shook her head. "No, I need to get out of here." Aiden nodded, but as he turned to look around, he saw a figure standing by the gas station's entrance. It was a man, his face obscured by a hood, watching them intently. Aiden's heart raced. He turned back to Emily, who was staring at the man with wide eyes. "That's him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's my boyfriend." Aiden's mind raced as he tried to process the situation. The man at the gas station entrance hadn't moved, but his presence was menacing. Aiden glanced at Emily, her fear palpable. He had to think fast. "Stay here," he told her, unbuckling his seatbelt. "I'll talk to him." Emily grabbed his arm. "No, don't. He's dangerous." Aiden nodded, his resolve hardening. "I'll be careful. Lock the doors." He stepped out of the car, the cool night air hitting his face. The gas station's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an eerie glow on the scene. Aiden approached the man cautiously, his heart pounding. "Hey," he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "What do you want?" The man didn't respond, his face still hidden by the hood. Aiden felt a chill run down his spine. He was about to speak again when the man finally looked up, revealing a gaunt, haunted face. His eyes were dark, almost hollow. "She's mine," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "You have no idea what you're getting into." Aiden's stomach twisted. "She said you left her out here. Why?" The man took a step forward, and Aiden instinctively backed away. "She didn't tell you everything, did she? About the argument?" Aiden glanced back at the car. Emily was watching them, her face pale and terrified. He turned back to the man. What do you mean? The man let out a bitter laugh. She's dangerous. I left her because I couldn't control her anymore. She's been playing mind games, manipulating people. Don't trust her. Aiden's mind was spinning. He looked at Emily again, her expression pleading. Who was telling the truth? The man seemed sincere, but his presence was unsettling. Emily, on the other hand, seemed genuinely afraid. Before Aiden could decide what to do, the man lunged at him. Aiden barely had time to react, stepping back and raising his hands defensively. The man grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. Get away from her, the man hissed, or you'll regret it. Aiden struggled, pushing the man away with all his strength. He stumbled back, panting. The man didn't pursue him but stood there, his eyes fixed on Aiden. Remember what I said, the man growled. She's not what she seems. Aiden hurried back to the car, his heart racing. He got in and locked the doors, glancing at Emily. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. What did he say? She asked, her voice trembling. Aiden hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing. We need to get out of here. He started the car and drove away from the gas station, his mind racing. Emily remained silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. The tension in the car was palpable, the weight of the man's words lingering. As they drove, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. He kept checking the rearview mirror, but there was no sign of the man. Still, the sense of unease persisted. After an hour of tense silence, they finally reached a small town. Aiden pulled into a motel parking lot, turning to Emily. We'll stay here for the night, he said. You can call someone in the morning. Emily nodded, but her eyes were distant. Aiden got them a room and they settled in, the motel's dim lights doing little to dispel the lingering fear. Aiden lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't stop thinking about the man's words. What if he was right? What if Emily was dangerous? He glanced at her. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands. She looked vulnerable, but there was something in her eyes when she looked up, something that made Aiden's blood run cold. Thank you, she said softly, for helping me. Aiden forced a smile. You're welcome. As he lay there, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. The night was far from over, and the darkness outside seemed to creep closer, threatening to engulf them both. Jacob loved the serenity of nighttime drives. The hum of his car, the deserted roads, and the cool night air provided a sense of calm. On this particular night, he decided to take a detour through a winding, forested road he hadn't explored before. The dense canopy overhead blocked out most of the moonlight, leaving only the faint glow of his headlights to guide him. As Jacob drove, he noticed how the road seemed to narrow, the trees pressing in closer on either side. His GPS showed a straight route ahead, but the surroundings gave him an uneasy feeling. He dismissed it as his mind playing tricks in the dark. After all, he had always enjoyed the thrill of exploring the unknown. About 20 minutes into the drive, Jacob saw a figure in the distance. It was a woman standing by the side of the road, frantically waving her arms. He slowed down, the beam of his headlights illuminating her pale, distressed face. Rolling down his window, Jacob called out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" "Yes, please," she replied, her voice trembling. "My car broke down, and I have no cell service. Can you give me a ride to the nearest town?" Jacob hesitated for a moment, but her desperation was palpable. He unlocked the door, and she climbed in. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice full of relief. "I'm Emily, by the way." "Jacob," he responded, giving her a reassuring smile. "Where were you headed?" "I was visiting a friend in the next town over. I thought I'd take a shortcut through these roads, but my car just died on me," she explained. They drove in silence for a while, the only sounds being the car engine and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Emily kept glancing nervously at the rearview mirror, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Is everything all right?" Jacob finally asked. Emily took a deep breath. "I think someone was following me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before my car broke down, I noticed a truck that kept appearing in my rearview mirror. It was always at a distance, but it never seemed to go away." Jacob's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He checked his mirrors but saw nothing unusual. "Maybe it was just a coincidence," he suggested, trying to calm her. "We'll be in town soon, and you can call for help." As they rounded a bend, Jacob saw a set of headlights behind them. His heart skipped a beat. The vehicle was approaching fast, its high beams glaring in his mirrors. "Is that the truck?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Emily turned to look, her face paling. Yes, that's it. Please, we need to get away from here. Jacob floored the gas pedal, the engine roaring as they sped down the road. The truck behind them accelerated as well, maintaining its distance but refusing to fall back. This can't be happening, Jacob muttered, glancing at Emily. What do they want? I don't know, she replied, her voice shaking. I'd never seen that truck before tonight. The road twisted and turned, making it difficult for Jacob to keep up the high speed. He knew they needed to find a way to lose the truck or get to safety quickly. Up ahead, he spotted a sign indicating a rest area in 2 miles. Hold on, he told Emily. We're almost there. As they approached the rest area, Jacob took a sharp turn onto the gravel path, the car skidding slightly. He drove into the parking lot, cutting the headlights and parking behind a row of bushes. They sat in tense silence, watching as the truck barreled past the entrance and continued down the road. Jacob let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. I think we lost them, he said, turning to Emily. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you, Jacob. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along. Jacob's relief was short-lived as he saw the truck's headlights again, this time approaching the rest area from the opposite direction. Stay low, he instructed Emily, ducking down in his seat. The truck slowed as it entered the rest area, its engine idling as it prowled through the parking lot. Jacob's heart pounded in his chest. He could see the silhouette of the driver, but the darkness obscured any details. They held their breath, praying the truck would leave. Minutes felt like hours as the truck circled the lot. Finally, it pulled away, disappearing into the night. Jacob waited a few more minutes before speaking. We need to get to town and report this. It's not safe here. Emily agreed, and they cautiously resumed their journey. The road ahead seemed even darker now, the sense of foreboding heavier than ever. Jacob drove with heightened awareness, every shadow and flicker of light sending his heart racing. Emily remained silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. They both knew they had narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous situation, but the night was far from over. As they neared the outskirts of the town, Jacob's car began to sputter. No, he muttered, glancing at the fuel gauge. It was nearly empty. We need to find a gas station fast. Emily pointed ahead. There's one just up the road. I can see the lights. Jacob breathed a sigh of relief and pulled into the gas station. It was a small, old-fashioned place with a single pump and a dimly lit convenience store. He parked the car and got out to fill the tank. Emily stayed inside, watching his every move. As Jacob finished pumping the gas, he noticed a payphone near the store's entrance. I'm going to call the police, he told Emily. Stay in the car and keep the doors locked. He walked over to the payphone and dialed 911. The dispatcher answered, and Jacob quickly explained their situation, giving their location and describing the truck that had been following them. We'll send a patrol car to your location, the dispatcher assured him. Stay where you are and keep safe. Jacob hung up and headed back to the car, but something caught his eye. In the reflection of the store's window, he saw the truck. It was parked at the far end of the lot, partially hidden in the shadows. His pulse quickened, and he hurried back to the car. They're here, he whispered to Emily, who immediately tensed. We need to stay calm and wait for the police. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Jacob kept a close watch on the truck, but there was no movement. Finally, he saw the flashing lights of a police car approaching. Relief washed over him as the patrol car pulled into the gas station. 2 officers got out and approached Jacob's car. He explained everything to them, pointing out the truck at the end of the lot. The officers nodded and walked over to investigate. Jacob and Emily watched as the officers shone their flashlights into the truck's windows. After a moment, they turned back and signaled for Jacob to come over. He got out of the car and cautiously approached. The truck is empty, one of the officers said, but we found some disturbing things inside. Jacob's heart sank. What do you mean? The officer showed him a small notebook filled with detailed notes and photographs of various cars, including Jacob's. It looks like whoever was driving this truck has been following people for a while. Emily joined them, her face pale. What are we supposed to do now? We'll take the truck and its contents back to the station for further investigation, the officer replied. In the meantime, we recommend you both go somewhere safe and stay there until we can figure out who's behind this. Jacob nodded, grateful for the police's help but still shaken by the night's events. He and Emily got back into the car and drove into town, where they found a motel to stay for the night. As they settled into their room, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The truck might be gone, but the threat still lingered. He knew it would take time to feel safe again, but for now, they were alive and together. "Thank you, Jacob," Emily said, her voice breaking the silence. "I don't know what I would have done without you." He smiled weakly. "We got through it together. Let's just hope the police find out who's behind this." As they turn off the lights and try to get some rest, the events of the night replayed in Jacob's mind. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was determined to face it head-on, no matter what lay in the darkness.